The transport shuttle's engines hummed their final notes as Naya Corvallis gathered her toolkit and stepped onto the docking platform of mining station Helix 7. The artificial gravity felt heavier than she was used to, and the recycled air carried the metallic tang of industrial processing. She'd worked on dozens of remote stations throughout the outer colonies, but something about this place felt different, more isolated, more desperate. "Engineer Corvallis?" The voice came from behind her, smooth and modulated with the slight electronic undertone she recognized immediately. She turned to see a tall figure approaching, his movements precise and controlled. Half of his face was human, sharp cheekbones, intelligent dark eyes, skin weathered by years of hard living. The other half was seamlessly integrated cybernetic components, silver and black metal that caught the station's harsh lighting. "That's me," Naya replied, extending her hand. "You must be Supervisor Jorik Thane." His handshake was firm, the synthetic skin of his cybernetic hand surprisingly warm. "Thank you for coming so quickly. I know the contract was last minute, but we're facing critical system failures that our regular maintenance crew can't handle." As they walked through the station's corridors, Naya noticed the subtle signs of decline. Flickering lights, condensation, on the walls the slight vibration in the deck plates that suggested struggling atmospheric processors. "How long have you been experiencing problems?" 3 weeks now," Jorik said. His human eye focused ahead while she caught the subtle glow of his cybernetic one scanning their surroundings. "Started with minor glitches in the environmental controls. Now we're looking at potential life support, failure within 72 hours. If we can't stabilize the quantum core." They entered the main engineering section, and Naya felt her breath catch. The quantum core housing rose 3 stories through the center of the chamber, its crystalline surfaces pulsing with erratic energy patterns. She'd seen sick cores before, but this one looked like it was having seizures. "The fluctuations are getting worse," Jorik observed, standing close enough that she could smell the faint ozone scent that always clung to cybernetic interfaces. "My enhanced sensors are picking up harmonic distortions that shouldn't be possible with our current configuration." Naya set down her toolkit and pulled out her quantum scanner, watching the readings with growing concern. "These patterns, they're not random. There's an underlying structure here, almost like..." She paused, running the data through her mental calculations. "Like someone's been introducing deliberate interference." Jorik's cybernetic eye flared brighter for a moment. "Sabotage? Maybe, or someone's been making unauthorized modifications." She looked up at him, noting how the artificial light played across the junction where flesh met metal on his face. "I'll need full access to the core chamber and all maintenance logs from the past month." "Done." He input commands on a nearby console with mechanical precision, but she noticed the very human way he paused, as if weighing his next words. "Fair warning, you'll be working closely with me on this. I'm the only one left on station with the clearance to access the core's primary systems." Naya found herself smiling. "Good. I work better with a partner anyway." Something shifted in Jorik's expression, a softening around his human eye that made her wonder what stories lay behind his augmentations. As the core's unstable light painted strange shadows across the engineering bay, she had the distinct feeling that fixing the station's heart might not be the only repair work she'd be doing during her stay on Helix 7. The quantum core pulsed, again its rhythm almost like a heartbeat, and Naya began to suspect that some connections couldn't be diagnosed with instruments alone. The maintenance tunnels beneath Helix 7's main decks were cramped, forcing Naya and Jorik to work in uncomfortably close quarters as they traced the quantum field conduits. For the past 6 hours, they'd been following the erratic energy patterns deeper into the station's infrastructure, and what they'd found was troubling. "Look at this," Naya said, her voice echoing softly in the narrow space. She held her scanner up to a junction box, its screen casting blue light across her concentrated features. The field harmonics have been altered at 17 different nodes throughout the system. This isn't equipment failure. Someone's been systematically destabilizing the core. Jorik maneuvered closer, his larger frame creating an intimate cocoon around her as he examined the readings over her shoulder. She could hear the soft whir of his cybernetic components processing data, feel the warmth radiating from his human side. "The modifications are sophisticated," he said, his breath stirring, her hair. "Whoever did this knows our systems better than most of my own crew." "Inside job?" she asked, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened when his mechanical fingers brushed hers as he took the scanner. "Has to be. These access points require command-level authorization." His voice carried a note of betrayal that made her look up at him. In the scanner's glow, she could see the conflict playing across his human features. "I've worked with these people for 3 years. I trusted them." They continued through the tunnels, their investigation revealing more evidence of sabotage. At each new discovery, Naya found herself paying less attention to the technical details and more to her enigmatic partner. She watched how he moved through the confined spaces with surprising grace despite his augmentations, how his cybernetic eye would dim when he was thinking deeply, how he unconsciously rubbed the junction point at his temple when he was frustrated. "Can I ask you something?" she said as they paused at a major conduit intersection. "About the modifications?" He was running diagnostics on a control panel, his mechanical fingers dancing across the interface with practiced efficiency. "About you." When he looked up, she gestured toward his augmentations. "Mining accident?" A shadow crossed his features. "Asteroid collision. 7 years ago. I was leading a deep core extraction team when our mining platform lost containment. The quantum explosion." He touched the metal side of his face almost unconsciously. "Half my crew didn't make it. The other half wished they hadn't. But you kept working in space. Someone has to keep the lights on out here." His smile was rueful. "Besides, the augmentations help. I can interface directly with the station systems, feel the quantum fluctuations like a sixth sense. Sometimes I think I understand the machines better than people now." Naya surprised herself by reaching out to touch the seamless junction where synthetic skin met metal on his wrist. "I don't think that's true. You've been nothing but considerate since I arrived. Patient. Kind." Jorik went very still, his cybernetic eye focusing on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Most people find the augmentations unsettling." "Most people don't work with quantum systems for a living," she replied. "I think there's beauty in the way biological and artificial systems can integrate, create something new and functional." She paused, realizing how close they'd drawn together in the narrow tunnel. Something stronger than either could be alone. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities, until Jorik's cybernetic components suddenly flared to life with urgent alerts. "We have a problem," he said, his enhanced hearing picking up sounds she couldn't detect. "Someone's triggered the emergency lockdown protocols. We're trapped down here." As if summoned by his words, the tunnel's emergency lighting activated, bathing them in red warning strobes. Somewhere above them, Naya could hear the heavy thud of blast doors sealing throughout the station. "How long?" she asked, checking her portable scanner for structural readings. "Minimum 6 hours before they can override the lockdown manually." Jorik was already interfacing with the tunnel's communication system. "The saboteur must have realized we were getting close." Naya settled back against the tunnel wall, oddly calm despite their predicament. "Well, at least we'll have time to analyze all the data we've collected. And..." She smiled at him. "I can't think of anyone I'd rather be trapped with while the universe tries to kill us." Jorik's answering smile was entirely human, warm, and genuine. "The feeling is mutual, Naya. The feeling is very mutual." The emergency lighting cast dancing shadows across the maintenance tunnel as Naya and Jorik settled in for what promised to be a long wait. 6 hours trapped together in a space barely wide enough for 2 people. Under normal circumstances, it would have been claustrophobic. Instead, Naya found herself oddly comfortable, sharing ration packs and water while they worked through the sabotage data on her portable console. "The pattern's becoming clearer," she said, highlighting sections of code on her screen. "Your saboteur isn't just trying to cause system failures, they're creating a specific resonance cascade. If this continues, the quantum core won't just fail. It'll create a feedback loop that could tear apart the station's molecular structure. Jorik leaned closer to study the projections, his cybernetic eye casting pale light across the data streams. Whoever's doing this wants to make sure Helix 7 can't be repaired. They want it completely destroyed. But why? This station supports mining operations for half the sector. Exactly. His voice carried a bitter edge. There's been talk lately about shutting down some of the outer mining operations, consolidating resources closer to the core worlds. Maybe someone decided to force the issue. As they worked, Naya found herself stealing glances at her companion. The cramped quarters had broken down the formal barriers between them, and she was discovering layers to Jorik she hadn't expected. When he concentrated, he had a habit of humming softly, barely audible, but her engineer's ears picked up the frequency. It was strangely soothing. "You know," she said during one of their analysis breaks, "before I became an engineer, I studied xenobiological harmonics. Different species process sound and vibration in fascinating ways." "Really?" Jorik shifted to face her more directly, genuinely interested. "What got you interested in that?" "My grandmother was from Kepler 442b. Her people communicated partially, through harmonic resonance. Emotional states expressed through frequency modulation." Naya smiled at the memory. "She used to say that every person had their own unique frequency, and when you found someone whose resonance complemented yours, you found your match," Jorik finished softly. Their eyes met in the dim light, and Naya felt something shift between them, subtle but unmistakable, like the moment when two quantum fields achieve perfect synchronization. "What frequency do you resonate at?" she asked, surprised by her own boldness. Instead of answering with words, Jorik did something unexpected. His cybernetic components began to emit a soft, steady tone, not mechanical or harsh, but musical, complex. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, creating harmonics in the tunnel's metal walls. "I can modulate the electromagnetic fields in my augmentations," he explained, his voice mixing with the gentle resonance. "It's usually just for system diagnostics, but..." Naya closed her eyes, letting the frequency wash over her. Without thinking, she began to hum along, finding the complementary tones instinctively. Her voice blended with his generated frequency, creating something entirely new, a harmony that seemed to make the very air around them vibrate with warmth. When the sound faded, they sat in silence, both breathing a little faster than before. "I've never done that with another person," Jorik admitted quietly. "Neither have I. Not like that." Naya reached out in the darkness, finding his hand, the human one. His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and slightly calloused from years of technical work. They stayed like that for a long moment, connected by touch and the lingering echo of their shared harmony. Then Jorik's cybernetic sensors chimed with an incoming alert. "The lockdown's been partially lifted," he said, though he made no move to release her hand. "We can get back to the engineering section, finish tracing the sabotage." "Good," Naya replied, though she found herself reluctant to leave their intimate cocoon. "We need to stop this before the cascade becomes irreversible." As they gathered their equipment and prepared to navigate back through the tunnels, Jorik caught her arm gently. "Naya, what happened just now, the resonance we created, was beautiful," she finished for him. "And real. Whatever frequency you're operating on, Jorik, it harmonizes perfectly with mine." His smile was radiant even in the dim emergency lighting. "Then let's go save this station. We've got work to do." Moving through the tunnels toward the main engineering section, Naya realized that somewhere in the past few hours, this had stopped being just another repair contract. The saboteur had unknowingly done them a favor, forcing them together long, enough to discover that some connections transcend the merely physical, creating bonds that resonate at the deepest level. Now they just had to catch whoever was trying to destroy that connection before it had a chance to fully form. The engineering bay buzzed with activity as Naya and Jorik worked through the night, their investigation finally bearing fruit. The saboteur's identity had emerged from the data patterns like a ghost materializing from quantum static. Tomek Voss, a former mining engineer who'd been laid off 6 months ago when the company downsized operations. He's been using his old access codes, Jorik explained, his fingers flying across multiple interfaces simultaneously, both human and cybernetic hands working in perfect coordination, clever enough to mask his trail, but not clever enough to account for harmonic analysis. Naya watched him work, admiring the seamless integration of man and machine. There, she said, pointing to a spike in her scanner readings. He's accessing the core chamber right now. They moved swiftly through the station's corridors, arriving at the quantum core to find Tomek hunched over the primary control console, his face illuminated by the erratic energy pulses. He was older than she'd expected, with the hollow-eyed look of someone who'd lost everything he'd worked for. Tomek. Jorik's voice was firm but not unkind. Step away from the console. The older engineer turned, his expression cycling through surprise, defiance, and finally resignation. Jorik, should have known you'd figure it out eventually. Always. We're too smart for your own good. Why? Naya asked, keeping her scanner trained on the core's fluctuating readings. They were approaching critical instability. This station employs 300 people. Their families depend on these jobs. The same families they plan to relocate when they shut us down anyway, Tomek spat. At least this way the company can't just walk away and pretend we never existed. They'll have to answer for what happens here. What happens here is mass murder, Jorik said, moving closer. Whatever grievances you have with corporate policy, this isn't the answer. For a moment, it looked like Tomek might surrender. Then his hand slammed down on the console, initiating a final cascade sequence that would overload the core beyond any possibility of repair. Too late, he whispered. It's already done. Naya's scanner screamed warnings as the quantum field began its terminal spiral. We have maybe 10 minutes before the core breaches, she told Jorik urgently. I can stabilize it, but I'll need someone to maintain the harmonic buffers while I recalibrate the primary matrix. I can do it, Jorik said immediately, moving to the secondary control station. No, you don't understand. Naya caught his arm, her eyes intense. The harmonic buffers require constant manual adjustment. One mistake, one moment of lost synchronization, and the feedback will kill whoever's operating them. It's a two-person job that needs perfect coordination. Jorik's cybernetic eye flared as he processed the implications. Then we do it together. They took their positions at opposite sides of the core chamber, Naya at the primary matrix controls, Jorik managing the harmonic buffers. The quantum field pulsed between them like a living thing, chaotic and beautiful and deadly. Match my frequency, Naya called over the rising harmonic whine. She began the delicate process of realigning the core's quantum state, her fingers dancing across holographic controls that responded to both touch and thought. Jorik's cybernetic systems hummed to life, generating the complementary frequencies she needed. But this was different from their intimate moment in the tunnel. This required absolute precision, perfect trust. One of them couldn't simply follow the other. They had to move together, think together, become a single unified system. Now, Naya shouted, initiating the primary recalibration sequence. The core's chaotic pulsing began to settle into more regular patterns as Jorik's harmonic buffers caught and redirected the dangerous resonances. For 5 critical minutes, they worked in perfect synchronization, their minds linked through the quantum field itself. When the core finally stabilized, its steady blue glow replacing the violent energy storms, they both collapsed against their respective control stations, exhausted but triumphant. We did it, Naya breathed, looking across the chamber at Jorik. We actually did it. But Jorik was staring at her with an expression of wonder that had nothing to do with their technical achievement. Naya, he said softly, during the stabilization sequence, and I could feel your thoughts, your emotions. It was like we were sharing the same quantum frequency. She felt her breath catch. I felt it too. The connection was so complete, so natural. Tomek, forgotten in their moment of shared revelation, chose that moment to speak up from where station security had finally arrived to apprehend him. You, Two make quite a team, he said with grudging respect. Maybe there's hope for this place after all. As security led him away, Jorik crossed the chamber to where Naya stood. What we just experienced, he said, reaching out to touch her face with his human hand. My people have legends about connections like that. They called it resonance bonding, when two souls find their perfect harmonic match. Is that what you think happened to us? She asked, leaning into his touch. I think, Jorik said, his voice carrying both the warmth of human emotion and the certainty of cybernetic analysis, that we just proved some bonds transcend the merely physical. We synchronized at the quantum level, Naya. Our hearts are literally beating in harmony. As if to prove his point, she could feel it, the steady rhythm of his pulse matching hers, their biological and synthetic systems finding perfect equilibrium, together. 3 weeks had passed since the sabotage crisis, and Helix 7 hummed with renewed vitality. The quantum core pulsed with steady, healthy rhythms, and the mining operations had resumed at full capacity. Naya had completed every repair on her original contract and several additional upgrades, but she found herself reluctant to leave. She stood in the observation deck, watching the gas giant that Helix 7 orbited paint the stars in shades of amber and violet. Behind her, she could hear Jorik's approaching footsteps. She'd learned to recognize the subtle difference in rhythm between his natural and cybernetic leg. The transport arrives in 6 hours, he said, joining her at the viewport. His reflection overlapped with hers in the transparent metal, creating the illusion that they were floating together among the stars. I know. Naya's voice was quieter than usual. My next contract is on Titan Station, routine atmospheric processor maintenance. Should take about 2 weeks. Sounds important, Jorik replied, though they both knew it was make work compared to what they'd accomplished together. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the distant ballet of mining ships moving between the station and the asteroid belt. Finally, Naya turned to face him directly. Jorik, what we have, the resonance bonding, the quantum synchronization, is it sustainable across distance? Or was it just something that happened in crisis conditions? Instead of answering immediately, Jorik activated his cybernetic systems. The familiar harmonic tone filled the observation deck, but this time it was different, richer, more complex. It carried undertones she'd never heard before, frequencies that seemed to speak directly to her heart. I've been working on this, he said, his voice mixing with the generated harmonics. A way to maintain our connection even when we're apart. My cybernetic components can broadcast on quantum frequencies that transcend normal space-time limitations. Naya felt tears gathering in her eyes as she recognized what he was offering. You're talking about permanent quantum entanglement. That would mean we'd always be connected, no matter where our work takes us. More than connected, Jorik said, stepping closer. Synchronized. I would feel your presence whether you were in the next room or on the other side of the galaxy. She reached out, placing one hand on his human cheek and the other on his cybernetic side. And you'd feel mine? I already do. His smile was radiant. But Naya, there's something else. The mining consortium has offered me a promotion, chief engineer for the entire outer sector. It would mean traveling between stations, overseeing major system upgrades. That sounds like exactly the kind of work you were meant to do, she said, though her heart was sinking. It is, but I turned it down. What? Why? Jorik's hands covered hers, his organic and synthetic warmth blending together. Because they offered you the same position, Chief Quantum Systems Specialist Outer Sector Operations. We'd be working together, traveling together, solving the kinds of complex problems that require perfect synchronization. Naya stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. They offered me a permanent position? I may have suggested that the consortium's quantum systems would benefit from having an engineer who understands harmonic resonance theory. His cybernetic eye gleamed with mischief. I also mentioned that some repairs require a 2-person team with perfect synchronization, and that you and I had proven we could work together under pressure. Jorik Thane, she said, rising up on her toes to kiss him. "You are brilliant and sneaky and absolutely perfect." The kiss was everything their harmonic resonance had promised. Complete synchronization, perfect balance, two complementary frequencies creating something beautiful and new. When they finally separated, both were breathing hard. "So," Jorik said, his forehead resting against hers, "shall we tell the transport captain he'll be flying back empty? I believe we have a new orbit to establish." Naya laughed, the sound mixing with the continued harmonic output from his cybernetic systems. "I can't think of anything I'd rather do than spend the rest of my life in perfect synchronization with you." As they sealed their new partnership with another kiss, the quantum, core 3 decks below them pulsed in steady, healthy rhythms. But if anyone had been monitoring the harmonic frequencies closely, they might have noticed something remarkable. The core's quantum field had synchronized itself to match the resonance patterns of two hearts beating in perfect unison. Outside, the viewport, the stars wheeled in their eternal dance, but Naya and Jorik had found something more stable than stellar mechanics, more reliable than gravitational constants. They had found each other's frequency, and in doing so discovered that home wasn't a place. It was the perfect harmonic resonance between two souls who had learned to sing the same quantum song. Their new orbit was just beginning.